Hey, hey, Rick, I understand you're having a birthday. Ah. One of the first pictures I'd like to show is you that I have out here in California, is you at grade school. Um, as many of you know, Rick, or may not know, Rick used to fall all the time as a little kid. He had this affinity for falling for the first 7 years of his life. And he didn't know how to put out his hands. He would always fall on his head, and the same spot would bulge. And I used to go, Rick, can't you put out your hands instead of keep bouncing like that? And then I realized, as might be indicated by this photo, that it wasn't his fault. When you have a lot of wind behind you and ears that big, you tend to, you can't, you just fall over. You're pushed over. So the nature took over. So, Rick, I'm sorry for thinking that you were clumsy, but you weren't. It was all in your ears.
All right, there are a lot of funny stories about my brother, and I'm going to tell you one that's probably a little more serious. He went to Vietnam in the 60s and won that war all by himself. When he got there, he went into the monsoon season, and it rained for 4 months straight. At first, it was stingy rain, and then there was big old fat rain, and then there was the rain that comes in from the side, and then there was some rain that seemed to come up from above. And after 4 months, just like that, somebody turned off the rain and the sun came out. When all of a sudden his platoon came under fire and some shrapnel jumped up and bit him. While recovering in the hospital, he learned to play ping pong while he was watching Gomer Pyle. He was invited to the White House, and he met to meet President Johnson. President Johnson asked him where he was hurt, and he said, I was hurt in the buttocks. And President Johnson said, I'd like to see that. Rick dropped his pants on live TV, and you fainted. Rick thought he was going back to Vietnam, and but the Army thought he could help fight the communists by playing ping pong. And Rick was so good that the Army put him on the All-American ping pong team. He eventually, years later, went back to China. I think he was the first to play ping pong, and he was the first American that had been there in like 1,000,000 years or something like that. Then he got invited back to the White House again, and this time he met President Nixon, and President Nixon had him at the Watergate Hotel. Middle of the night, the flashlights woke him up. He complained, and then coincidentally, Richard Nixon was resigned from office. Rick came home. He married his soulmate, Ginny. They had a kid named Forrest, very smart kid. Went to Hamilton College, played football there. And but that's all I have to say.
Happy birthday, Papa. All right, so it's around 1979 and Halloween. Nice day out, I remember. And sunny, warm. And there's this big mask on the kitchen table. Giant, hairy, like ugly mask. It's just like an ugly person. It's not like a goblin or anything. And I know it's lying around in the house. And I see Dad grab it and put it on and walk out of the house and walk across the street. And right across from our house on 7 Taylor Street in Medford, there's another 2 or 3 family, a brown house. Mrs. Corbett had moved across the street. She was one of the local watchdogs for the neighborhood, and she lives on the first floor alone, I think. And Dad walks across the street and with the mask on, walks across the street and starts knocking on the first floor windows and basically starts scaring the shit out of Mrs. Corbett and chasing her from window to window, making noises and jumping, and all for a lark. And I'm standing there watching and just dying and not knowing what's going on. And it was just such a fun thing to be a part of. I couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable. Oh, what a great memory. And I always associate that memory with Dad's playfulness and love of life and just love of laughter. You know, it's a good one. It's hilarious.
Hi, Papa. Happy birthday. You say happy birthday to Papa? Jack just woke up. So my favorite Papa memory is when Greg and I had just told everyone we were pregnant with Maddie. It was in January. And there's a lot of emotions, a lot of things going on. And I need to tell the story. And we were living over in his gross bachelor Lexington apartment. And I think I had really met you. I think I had met you maybe 2 or 3 times at this point. Like, that's kind of how that went down. So you came over, and I was like standing down the hallway, and you came in the house and you gave this giant Red Sox fleece. Oh my God. I need to tell a story. Shh. This giant Red Sox fleece to Greg. And so it was, huge. It's like this massive sweatshirt. And you were like, well, this is for Kate and the baby because I didn't want them to get cold. And it was just, oh my God. It was just like the sweetest thing. It was just so loving and kind. And I'll never forget it because it was just like, at that moment, it was, I can't even say how much it meant to me because everyone... Okay, well... I love you. Papa, I love you, and that moment meant a lot, and I've thought about it a lot. And now I have to go.
Hey, here's another picture. I thought this picture was taken when Rick was about 2 or 3 years old, maybe 3.5, 2.5, something like that. Would be 1950, or thereabouts, 51. Hopalong Cassidy was big those days, and my Aunt Nora gave us these outfits because our parents wouldn't buy them for us. And notice Rick is on a horse, and I'm walking. What's that all about?
This is like take 100. Hi, Dad. Happy birthday. Okay, one of my favorite Dad Papa stories is in 8th grade. We were all trying out for cheerleading, and it was like the big thing because we were trying out to be cheerleaders in high school. And a bunch of us didn't make the team, and we were devastated. And I remember Dad said, hey, why don't invite all your friends over tonight, whoever didn't make it. And I said, okay. So I think it was Megan Powers and Melissa Lima. I think that's who. Rachel Carney made it, but she still weaseled her way over. But, and so Dad took me and Megan Powers and Melissa Lima to the grocery store. And he told us each to take a shopping cart and put whatever we wanted in it. And we filled the shopping. I don't think we filled 3 shopping carts, but we bought all the teen comfort junk food you could ever imagine. Like the whole, I think we definitely filled one whole cart. And then he had everyone come over to our house. We were all, we were crying, we were upset. And he ordered us all these pizzas and set us up with like our favorite. I think he rented us videos back then and set us up in the living room with all the food, all the videos, like pulled out the mattress for us to fly down the stairs, which we used to do all the time. But it was just such a telling moment of how, like, my friends just love you. Like, my friends love Dad, and it just made a big difference going forward from that too, because if we were ever in a tricky situation where someone drank too much, or we, couldn't find a taxi or whatever, if I said, hey, I can call my dad, he'll come pick us up, like, everyone was always fine with that. And that just shows a lot how much everyone loves Dad and how important he is to people and how he makes people feel so comfortable. And it just really made a big difference all the way through. I think even in my 20s, I had to, or maybe even 30s, Dad had to come pick Melissa Brandt up once because we had a few too many cocktails. And there's just no judgment, and they never felt uncomfortable about it. And that's one of the things that I love about you, Dad, and one of the things I hope to pass on to my kids, that they just feel so comfortable calling us when they need to. Love you. Happy birthday. Mwah.
Happy birthday, Dad. I love you. And I would consider you my best friend. I think I also would consider you the person that gives me the best advice on every aspect of my life. Business, marriage, raising my children, and you've taught me how to be a good person, and I'm grateful for that. And I want to wish you a happy birthday, Dad, and I think you're the best, and I love you. Bye.
Years later, Rick's career as a globe-trotting archaeologist came to an end. He had a passion for collecting religious artifacts and ran up against a man named Belloc, who was fond of saying to Rick, there is almost nothing you can possess that I cannot take away from you. And Rick's greatest find was taken by the U.S. government and put in a warehouse. And but fast forward a few weeks, and Rick was working for Federal Express, and he left Memphis on a plane and crashed somewhere near the Cook Islands. And he was alone on that island for 5 years with nothing but a box, FedEx box, and a Wilson soccer ball. And Rick's wife, Ginny, remarried 2 weeks after the crash, in fact, to Rick's dentist. A dentist, by the way, who was very good. He was spared by a deranged murderer years later because he was such a good dentist. And when Rick was found, it was really big news, and Ginny didn't come down to the hospital in Hawaii. In fact, Federal Express had a big party at the airport when he arrived back home, and she forgot to go. And so Rick was a little furious. He went to Ginny's house, and when she answered the door, said, so how have you been? Rick said, I'm fine. I've lost a little weight since I last saw you. And there was kind of a long pause, and then she said, well, Rick said, I was wondering, do you have any of my 98.5 T-shirts lying around? And Ginny said, no, I get rid of all those when you moved out. And then Rick said, well, I actually didn't move out. I was in a plane crash, and I was stranded on an island for 5 years. And it was the Cook Islands, and it was kind of big news. And Ginny said, oh, yeah, it's been so long since you called. I know that. In fact, everyone kept telling me that I had to let you go, but I couldn't. So I have a surprise for you. And she led Rick out into the garage, and there was his favorite car. But the front bumper was missing, and there was a big dent in the side door. And she said, it's all yours. And Rick looked at it, and then he get inside, and he turned it on, and he said, what did you do, raise hogs in here? This place it's a mess. And he looked at the odometer, and there was 250,000 miles on the car. And Ginny said, I never used it. It's in the pristine shape that you gave it to me. I left it just as it was on the day that you moved out. And then Rick said, I did not move out. I was in a plane crash and stranded on an island for 5 years. And I did not put 250,000 miles on the car in the 5 months that I used it. Maybe you forgot. Did you rent the car out to a pig farmer who used it to spread manure? Because it looks like one of those old moldy cars from Katrina. And she said, no, we'll just have to agree to disagree. Rick handed her the watch that Ginny had given her. And he said, it's a family heirloom, and it should stay in your family. And I'm sure you'd like to give me back my mother's diamond ring that I gave you. And Ginny said, well, it's not really a fair trade. And I was kind of kidding you about the watch. It was really kind of a piece of junk. And Rick just didn't say a word. He just backed out of the garage, drove it straight to a junkyard, but not before he painted the word Ginny on the rear.
Just wanted to wish my godfather, Uncle Rick, Papa, a happy 70th birthday. And a quick story. A few summers ago, summer 2015, I was applying to the job that I currently have now. And I was running around my house looking for a belt that matched my shoes in color. And Uncle Rick, Uncle John, and my father all sitting at my kitchen table, and they were asking me why I was running around. And I told them, I can't find a belt that matches my shoes. And they started laughing, and they were like, oh, yeah, you need a belt that matches your shoes, making fun of me for, trying to give me fashion advice. Meanwhile, Uncle John was wearing Ugg boots when it's 80 degrees outside. My father's wearing a blue bathing suit with sneakers on, and Uncle Rick was wearing a brown suit with a blue 98.5 t-shirt on underneath. So, safe to say I didn't listen to any of their fashion advice.
Anyway, next picture I want to share with you is there were a series of these pictures taken at Christmas by my dad. At the time, not many people were doing it. It was very avant-garde that you would have personalized Christmas cards. And we did this for a number of years. You can see Rick holding his little teddy bear in the middle of that. It's the cutest thing in the world. At any rate, I'd like to say that we did this. I think I was 28 years old when the final one was taken. Rick was in his 20s. Dad would get us in our pajamas and have us pose for a Christmas picture.
Happy birthday, Papa. Okay, so my story starts, Adam and I were lucky enough to go to Ireland with Rick and Kate, and we had Ella with us. She was 9 months old. So we are in Ireland, and we're spending a lot of time with family, Kate's family, and we're in Dublin, and we rented a car. And up until this point, we were just staying in the hotel, so we hadn't packed all of our stuff into a car yet. And it was the middle of the day, and Adam and Rick are outside with this rental car that we just picked up, trying to fit all of our luggage and stuff into this kind of small car. So, long story short, Rick ends up volunteering, we found this out a little bit later, to essentially empty out his luggage, his suitcase, and bring just a few choice items along with him for the rest of the trip. And I mean, we had, I want to say, at least 4 or 5 days left. So he ends up wearing this sweater, this one nice sweater, for like a week, or almost a week. And of course, Adam, myself, and Kate, we all started ragging on him, and he took it all in stride. He laughed about it. His nickname, I think Adam made up the nickname Whiff Lombardi. And in true Rick spirit, he just went with it, smiled, laughed. Whether or not he really thought it was funny, I don't know, but he was very sweet about it. And the story goes on. We end up going to this other hotel, and Kate and I are up in the room with Ella Bella, and Adam and Rick are downstairs in the lobby on a computer. And Kate and I, we had a glass of wine, and we called down to the lobby, and we asked, if they could see if Whiff Lombardi was in the lobby. I still laugh about it to this day. He's such a good guy because he didn't get upset with us, and I think we stuck with the joke for the whole rest of the trip. So God bless you, Rick. I love you a lot, and I think that I hit the lottery with you as my father-in-law. So thank you for being you, and I love you, and happy birthday. And I hope someday my kids know how lucky they are to have you as their papa.
So, Rick did have some troubles when he came home. He was sentenced to serve 2 life sentences for killing his ex-wife and the golf pro she was banging. And he became friends with a guy that looked just like Morgan Freeman, and they worked together in the prison library. And prior to that, the roof on the license plate factory needed resurfacing. And, special details get special privileges. Rick agreed to do some complex paperwork for the guard. And that's how it came to pass that on the second to the last day of the job, on the convict crew that tarred the plate factory roof wound up sitting in a row at 10 o'clock in the morning, drinking icy cold Bohemian-style beer, courtesy of one of the hottest screws ever to walk a turn at the Walpole State Prison. And the colossal prick even managed to sound magnanimous. They sat there with the sun on their shoulders. They felt like free men. They could have been tarring the roof of one of their own houses. They were the lords of all their creation. And as for Rick, he spent the break hunkered down in the shade with a strange smile on his face, watching the others drink his beer. And to this day, I have no idea what those 2 Italian ladies were singing about. In truth, I don't want to know. Well, anyway, one night the door to his prison door opens, and they take him out. Rick knew where they were taking him. He had a date with the warden's wife. He got to the back of the truck, and the springs on the car nearly gave out under his weight. He arrived at the warden's house, and the warden came out with a shotgun. And the guards reassured him that Rick was there just to cure his ailing wife. And that, of course, was news to Rick. That's not what he thought. Anyway, Rick goes up to the stairs and barely fits through the doorway. He sits on the bed and kisses the warden's wife while she's sitting there in her nightgown. And her name was Coffee, but it was spelled differently. Her nickname was Bugsy. And Rick had a boatload of bees come out of his mouth after that kiss. And they dated for a while, but eventually she broke it up.
One of my favorites is finally along comes Rick's love of his life. This, as you may notice, is not the Addams Family. It is a picture influenced by Rick and Kate's honeymoon in Italy, where everybody posed for photos like this. At any rate, Rick, how many times have I said at any rate? A lovely picture, and that's Gregory, their firstborn, Gregory John Muscatel, on her lap. And that was a great day, great wedding, and they were off to a great life together.
When I first met Gene, he didn't get the sense that I was a family person, I think because I moved so far away from my family. And I had tried telling him, I'm from a big family and we're like really into family. So anyway, I don't know how much you believe me about that, but when I came home, I first introduced him to everyone except my parents at a party at Adam's house. And he got to see, like, it's a pretty big family. So the next time I wanted him to meet Uncle Rick and Auntie Kate and actually like sit down and talk with them, I had said, come on, let's go to their house. And I didn't call ahead, and we just, drove over there. When we got there, we walked up to the door, and I just opened the door, and Jean stopped me and went, you didn't knock. You can't just open their door. And I was like, yeah, I can. They keep their door unlocked. And so we walked in, and he was a little like, what is going on? So we walked upstairs, and Auntie Kate was home, so we had a nice visit with her, and she was like, oh, you just miss Rick. So that was fine, and we said, okay, nice talking to you. Then we went to Whole Foods, just 'cause. When we got back to my house, we went inside, and the only person that was home was Uncle Rick. He was there alone for some reason. And it was just very funny and very perfect. And it exemplified how we are sort of in each other's lives like that. And it gave Jean a better sense of our familial bond.
So it's August 1992, and Papa and I drive out to Hamilton. He's gonna drop me off the next day. We're staying at the Radisson Inn in Utica, and we're looking for dinner. And out in Utica, pizza places don't make French fries. They use their frylators for wings, I guess, but you can't get French fries. So we didn't know that, because you can get French fries at every pizza place around here. So we go out to walking around and go to, I don't even know, 5 pizza places looking for looking for fries. And I'm eating the same way as Papa, where we don't eat sugar or flour, and we want our French fries. And I just loved it, because I was ready to keep going too. I was ready to go to the next place. Yeah, let's go somewhere else. And I don't even remember what ended up happening, but it was just so fun to just keep going and going and going. And somehow we ended up happy. And the next morning, we had a nice big breakfast at the Radisson, and Papa took me to drop me off at school. And I can remember, loading the whole dorm room and standing, after we said goodbye 20 times, I'm sure. And I remember standing there and watching Papa drive away. And he had made me feel confident and ready to go do what I needed to do. And I felt good. I was ready. I was ready to be alone and on my own for the first time. I don't remember staying away from my parents for any real stretch of time. And I was ready to do it. And it was just like a big moment. It was just Dad and I on a little drop-off adventure to start college, and all the emotions associated with it. But I felt good, And it was hard to see him drive away. And I remember, tearing up, but being ready to go do what I needed to do. And that's it.
Hey Richard, happy 70th birthday. Let's see, I met you when you were 22, so I've been with you for 48 years. I've had the pleasure of watching you be a great dad to your children, how much you really cherish and love our children's spouses, your brothers, and of course, a super papa to your 7 wonderful grandchildren. I look forward to making a video again on your 80th birthday. And as someone once said to me many years ago, you are my main vein, my crutch, my cane. Ricardo, happy 70th. Love, Kate.
And the final picture that I have handy is a picture of Rick and I experiencing nature, being city kids. This was big. We got to see exotic birds down at the Boston Garden. My dad took us down there, and Rick was all dressed up here. It was lovely. We didn't often see that. And you'll probably notice that Rick is 5 years younger than me, but he's probably taller than me in this photograph. At any rate, that's all I have right now with me today. The best photo I have of Rick and I can't find. And it's a picture of us up on the rooftop at 59 Otis Street and looking over the city. And it was taken by my dad, and it reminds me of that James Taylor song, Up on the Roof. And Rick, I want to wish you a great birthday. I love you, and I'll be at Charlie's Kitchen waiting for you. Anyway, bye.
Anyway, I was saying Rick ended up marrying the girl of his dreams, Kathleen Sullivan. She was a country western singer, one finger missing. And she's the person that Rick had delivered that last federal package to. And they had 2 boys and a girl. And to this day, no one knows their names. And they honeymooned in Europe. And on the flight over, Rick was explaining to Kate the funniest things about Europe, and it's the little differences. And you know, they get the same shit over there that we have here, but it's a little different. And Kate said, example. And she said, well, you can walk into a movie theater in Amsterdam and buy a beer. And I don't mean like an old paper, like a beer in an old paper cup. I'm talking about like a glass of beer. And in Paris, you can buy a beer in McDonald's. And so, and you know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese? And Kate said, I don't know. And Rick said, they call it a Royale with cheese. And you want to know why? And Kate said, yeah, they're on the metric system, and they wouldn't even know what a quarter pounder is. And Rick said, check out the big brain on Kate. Anyway, while they were in Europe, they visited Rick's Italian relatives who had never seen an American relative before. They were very, very poor. And while they were there, Kate killed their only bull. And no one knows why she did this. She has remained silent on this issue for many, many years. But to get to the point, the afterbirth of this story is that my brother Rick, Uncle Rick, or Papa, is a real hero. And at 70 years old, is welcome to have the best 70th birthday ever. Love you, brother.
All right, everybody. Oh boy. Clem.
No,
All right. All right, everybody sing. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Hey boys, how are my monkeys? Hi Sonny, how's my monkeys? Hey Butts, I brought you a butternut donut. Hi monkeys, how we doing? How we doing? How we doing, boys? We gonna go to playtime? Alright, I'm gonna go sit down.